thank you all for coming, and wow, tough gig to follow. Don't really know how to do this, I'll just give it my best shot. We often ask ourselves what influences how good we feel at a workplace, and we're going to talk about how the thoughts that Lara has just explained to us, how that actually influences the built environment to an extent. And when we're asking ourselves this question, we see, as architects, we see three main parameters that define whether we're happy at the place we work. And then one is what we do there. One is who we work with. And the third main one is where we work. And as architects, that is where we see our possibility to influence this virtuous cycle and get into this virtuous cycle of workplace design. Designing a good workplace, using this to influence the identity of the building you're working in, influence the identity of the company you work for, taking this identity and use it to attract talent and ultimately have the people you want to work with and you want to have in your company, hence taking care of who you work with at the same time. So we need to ask ourselves what makes buildings work for workers, what makes a good workplace. And the first and foremost answer is quite simple. Think about the people, focus on spaces for people. And at Make, at the company I work for, we've done exactly this, and that is, that's our office. Before we've taken the cars out and put people in, and it now looks like this, and we've created this space that is a space that is initially not designed for people in the first place, but we've turned it into something, a space that works fantastically for us. And I've had this question before when showing this. The big question is like, okay, you replaced cars for people, very smart. Where do you put your cars? And the straightforward answer is we don't, because our office being in London, of the 120 people in our office, not one drives to work. We all cycle, or walk, or use the public transport, which admittedly is very good in London. But I think that even here, the system is good enough. The city is predominantly flat. Cycling is an option. If you cater for this in your workplace, you can actually trigger change in the behavior of your employees and take care of the car and the parking problem. That is a sideline, which I just weave in because it's quite close to my heart to talk about that. But our office space does exactly what we needed to do as architects. We've got this big empty space which we all sit in. We're all on the same floor, 120 people all on the same floor. We can all see each other. We've got these, it's quite funny, we've got these chairs that actually have wheels that are made for carpet, but as you can see, that's polished concrete, so they're bloody fast. So we can actually wheel through the space really quickly and go and talk to each other and regroup really quickly. That wasn't entirely planned, but it works. It's a lot of fun. But we have to realize that we are in the creative industry, we're in the construction industry. Not everybody necessarily works exactly like we do. There are corporations out there that have completely different needs and completely different means. So certainly if you design speculative offices, you might need other things. So we have to ask ourselves, not everyone works like this, so what are the common threads? And we found just a list of words that we use: variety of space, identity, I've mentioned it before, versatility is a very big one for us, and qualities that are linked to these words: ownership of your space, a certain focus, comfort, so it doesn't get too warm, like we're at risk of right here. So I just want to illustrate these themes a little bit. Variety is really a big one. Have the right space for the right thing you do at the right time of the day. Have it all at the same time if you need to, because you might want to swap between one and the other. Have just a large offer of non-bland space, just things that you can actually do task-driven, time-driven, size of people, group-driven, and just move around a lot. Versatility is equally important. Your spaces should be robust enough to have various uses during the day. That's our previous office, where we had this central space that was cafe space during the day, turned into presentation space, became breakout space in between, so it's quite versatile without actually really changing anything, because That's my firm belief that as soon as you start moving things around, you're starting to get into the trouble of things not really working properly. Activity, I've mentioned with the bicycles, but it can go much simpler. If your stairs are visible, if you encourage people to move around, if you have visual connection to your coworkers, you might want to just walk over and have a chat rather than have an email exchange. Your stairs encourage you to just walk upstairs if you're on multiple floors, and don't use the lift. And connectivity is about this, visual connection, connectedness of the spaces, seeing the people that you might need something from. It's about overlapping planes, so you don't just necessarily vertically stack planes, but if you do a slight overlap, you've got this cross connectivity of vision through the space. So from above, you can see what's happening below, rather than not seeing it because it's right below you. So it's this image there shows it a little bit, this overlapping of routes and spaces, and encouraging encounters and meetings that aren't necessarily planned. Well-being is a big theme at the moment. It has been for a long time now. It's come out into the light and is really important. The connection to the outside world, seeing life, seeing plants, seeing the city life, and actually being part of the city rather than just being in your own building. And all these ideas are great, and they're all lost if you lose focus throughout your design process and you just have these ideas at the very beginning and then it just gets diluted and washed, because a construction project takes a long time. And throughout that long time, things change, and you need to react to this change. And you need to maintain focus on the core ideas and just hone it and keep working on your design, on your project. Never think, oh, we're done, now we just have to build it. During that process, it's ongoing, and if you don't want to lose the quality, you have to maintain focus. If all goes well, we think then you achieve a building that does have a certain identity, that does say a bit more about what you're doing inside than just being purely functional without being non-functional, of course. To illustrate this a little more, I wanted to show you two case studies of very different office, workplace buildings that we have done. They're very different from many perspectives. One is a back office building in the north of England. It's a call center, and it's done on a shoestring budget. And the other one is a private bank headquarters building in Geneva, at the lakefront in Geneva. So budget was less, still a driving concern, but less of a constricting concern. And it's, because of that, quite a different project. So the first one, for insurance company Hiscox, this is a call center which, as you will see, meets an art gallery. We've had, at the beginning of the project, we've gone very deep into the brief and had lots of speed dating sessions with the decision makers. We had these, this is an image of these tablecloth sessions where you just talk over ideas, over drinks, and you do what you always, well, I always want to do in a restaurant, just scribble on the tablecloths. Obviously in a restaurant, I usually don't do that. Here, this was encouraged, and then we just had all these ideas together, and that all influenced the brief for the building and bringing the story of the building together. It's in York. That's Old York, not New York. We had this confusion before. We had to remove, I think, 20 or 30 bodies from the site when building the building, which is not unusual in York. It's just there's a lot of history there. And we're quite close to the city center and to the station. And the concept of the building was to create this one big space for everyone. So we moved the core over to one side, not into the center, one big space, and have this undulating trajectory, this route going up to the roof terrace. Because from the roof terrace, as you can see on this sketch, you can see the York Minster. And to get everyone on board to see the quality of this, we actually put a cherry picker on site before building anything and got the entire executive committee into this cherry picker and lifted them up to 18 meters height to say, see, if you're up there, you've got a clear view line to the Minster, and it's worth using this because it's a great asset. And I was talking about these overlapping, undulating areas, layers before, these floors before, and that's the key thing that we wanted to achieve in the space, to have floors that are showing this connectivity and this overlapping of space, visual connection. This is from the same viewpoint as that sketch is taken, and it just shows you how clear, in a way, this space is. You're back to the entrance door. So you enter the space, and you see straight away where everything is, which is the way up, where everybody's working, where's the reception, and so on. It's all very easy and clear. The only thing you don't see straight away is the lifts in the background. So we just kind of hid those away. They're there, but we've hidden them. It's about seeing from the floors back down, having that connectivity, and encouraging people to use the stairs going up, having this beautiful concrete stair where comfort is only induced where it's really needed. This is this lovely handcrafted leather handrail going up. It's the only place where we've really spent some money on the finishing surfaces. Everything else is self-finishing surfaces, concrete effectively, so it's pretty cheap. And it offers a large choice of different spaces. You've got the big atrium, you've got now there's a cafe down there where people actually from the street can come in and have their drinks. You've got the stacked workspaces above and the connecting stair. And as mentioned earlier, art played a big role. Hiscox has a large arts collection, and a lot of this art is actually hung and placed in this building. And that's interesting as well, because these are not posters or prints. These are all original artworks. So they're of some value. And this being a call center just says something to the people who work there, that they're actually valued and surrounded by what are quite remarkable art pieces. They link back to the context of the city and give some very interesting juxtapositions. And one art piece in particular is a little bit unusual, because when curating the art for this building, we've come across this rocket in one of the collections in the vicinity. And the rocket was actually installed in the building on the plinth of the tower crane. So where the tower crane used to stand, and where this roof light is in the roof for the tower crane to go through, we've put this rocket on its stand. And it's positioned at perfect 52-degree firing angle. So that's how you position a rocket if you ever want to fire it. And interestingly, this is the first building for Hiscox that is outside of London. That's up in the north. And what do you think where the rocket is actually aimed at? At its perfect firing angle. Exactly, it's London. So it's this tongue-in-cheek, slightly humorous link back to the headquarters, which gives the people working up there some link back and identity again, and also the knowledge, if we fire this, good luck. And beauty is always a word. It's difficult to say out loud in a presentation like this without blushing, because it's got this romantic air to it, but it is intrinsically important. Beautiful spaces are spaces that people take care of, and spaces that people engage with and like. And this is now the roof terrace as it's been manifested in concrete. You can imagine it being out there with tables, with candles in the wind, and people having romantic dinners almost up there. It just gives that additional quality to the space. And it's very versatile. It also contains the smallest buildings we've ever designed, which are these beehives, because there are some beekeepers in the employeeship who basically wanted to keep bees on the roof garden. So we made that happen. The space overall is great for a party. It's one big space, always good. Everybody in one space, good party. I'm having high hopes here. What is very interesting, it's a back office building. It's a call center. It's outside of London for a London-based company, and Hiscox use this building now to explain to people what they're about, what their work ethic is, how they tick, and that is, I think, the biggest achievement that you could have, that your building actually does this and links into the identity of the firm and influences this identity so much that this actually works. Interestingly, on top of this, here we are on the path from the dormitories of the York University to the actual university. So you can imagine the graduate walking past on his way to the final exams, thinking, this looks like a cool place. Maybe I'll drop them a line and see if they need me. And there you go. We may have just caught the talent right there. The other building that I'm going to show you is in Geneva. I said on the lakefront, it's really where the lake, I don't know how many of you know Geneva, where the lake becomes the River Rhone. So it's still considered lakefront, but it's really the riverfront. And in Geneva, the competition for talent is enormous, because every bank, every private bank especially, has their headquarter building there, has at least a dépendance there, and they are all out for staff, of course. So it's very important to to have a workplace that actually delivers. At the same time, you can't be too loud. Discretion is a major driver because it's Swiss private banking, so you can't be overly shouty. And when we started to design this building, we really wanted to get behind the mechanics of how a bank works. And it's really two buildings in one. You've got a client-facing element and you've got a staff-facing element. So the two have to coexist. They have to be separated and connected at the same time. It's a very complex infrastructural diagram behind this. We were at the same time very keen to have a certain permeability between these two buildings, to not hermetically close them shut them off between each other. And all this we've done not in a new building, but it's a conversion of 7 old buildings. So these are the buildings as they were before. And just to simplify this, we've done this really simple sketch. This is what the buildings looked like in principle. 7 buildings, 2 courtyards. And what we've really done is, apart from changing everything, by looks, we've just dropped a central atrium into the space and connected these courtyards with this atrium. And one of the bits of the brief was to have greenery and plant life for the well-being aspects in the building. We were quite afraid of this being bits and bobs of plants here and there, so we said, let's just join forces, put the entire planting budget into one, and make this massive green wall, which is at the end of the atrium. So it's 20 meters tall, 4 meters wide. It's quite something. It interestingly all sits on one column, so the foundation works for this were interesting. And on the other side, we've got the lift lobby platforms, where we've broken open the core and basically put the lift lobbies as part of this atrium. And you can see here in this little film these benches in the center of the atrium, which are actually mini waterfalls. Just imagine now, this was without sound, of course, but just imagine the sound that you have in a space like this. It's quite calm, quite serene, but encourages people to just have a seat there, think about what they're doing, or just taking a break. And you have the smell of the green wall, you've got the water in there, you've got people overlooking from the platform, so you've got this visual connection again. And interestingly, it really works as a connecting space. The facades offer the most daylight possible into the workspaces, so it's fully glazed in there. But at the same time, we're obviously dealing with confidentiality, because from the lift lobbies, you're not supposed to see the screens of the people that are working in there. So it's these blades in the facade are shielding your screens and are making confidentiality possible, which again allows you to have various different departments which normally wouldn't speak to each other because they don't really cross paths, to linger in the lift lobby because they're waiting for a lift for a minute or two, and to have a chat and to be able to do this because they're allowed to be there because they don't see something they shouldn't see. And then if all goes well, maybe they decide not to wait for the lift any longer and just stroll up or down the stairs. And we put this sculptural stair in there, which again has these overlapping platforms that again allows connection and views into different spaces, and just continue their conversation whilst walking along. And the COO has recently told me that this platform up there, this is a 4-meter cantilever reaching to the space, which is just an unusual thing to have. And he said that's where the $1 million deals are made, and that's where it's actually really all coming together. His words, not mine. Again, we've talked about it a while, activity. Even the humble escape stair is an important player. You just take care of it, consider it, make it optically visible, make it usable, make it friendly, make it legal. This wouldn't be legal in the UK. But in Switzerland, you can do stuff like this, which is obviously awesome. Elegance is now looking at the client side of life. The people who go to a private bank, which I'm sure a lot of you actually know, I don't really, from experience, but they come from 5-star backgrounds, coming from the best hotels in the city. They want to have that very same service and want to be catered to with the highest level of comfort and elegance possible. So this is our reception for the clients. What is really important, has been really important through the design process for us, is that the workplace where people, the relationship managers and the people who deal with these clients come from, doesn't fall back behind this. But people can actually meet their clients and the people they talk to on eye level and don't have the feeling that they're coming from the back office and now they're dealing with a client and then they've got to go back to the basement and carry on. So that's really interesting to then see how this space links into the context of the city and allows, again, a feeling of identity of the city, having a view over the roofs of Geneva, and ultimately allowing this glimpse, when you're on the street, this glimpse of the space back into the building. From the street, you can see this much, so it's very different to the building we've just seen before, where it was all on showcase. Here it's just a moment where you see all the way back to that green wall, but still, it translates this identity of the workplace and of the company, what they're about, to the outside world. And ultimately, like I said, it's two very different places and spaces and buildings, but I think it just shows that getting under the skin of the brief and developing, really easing out what it is about that you're designing is something that is definitely worth the investment, and it's worth spending the time and the energy doing and pursuing it. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Florian, you mentioned so many qualities about the perfect workplace. If you had to limit them down to 3, what would they be?
I was dreading for you to ask me this. That's obviously a really difficult one, because, like I said, every workplace is different, and you want to be able to respond to your clients and to your brief. However, I would say the variety aspect, offering a variety of spaces that are versatile. And I always say robust spaces, spaces that can take a hammering, that can actually take things being thrown at them and moved around, and that are open for change are really the most important things. But I would really not want to just limit it to that. Obviously, there's lots more.
Well, how many of you can say you actually work in a versatile place? One, who actually comes from London. One more. Why is it so difficult for companies to implement what you just mentioned?
I think, well, this is really my personal thought. I can't back this up with a quote, like Lara can so well. But I really think that we all, in our generation, I would actually say, we come from the background of maximizing, of optimizing to the minimum, actually, to the minimum space that is needed, to the perfect workflow as we understand it today, and really honing to that, which often gives us ceiling heights that are not really all that great. If you look at it, they work, but they're not that amazing, which leads to daylight factors that we believe we have to follow, but we never challenge them, and so on. So we're constraining ourselves by wanting to maximize, whilst what I find is that very often the spaces that don't quite fit are the really performing spaces, are the good ones, the spaces that you can rub against, the spaces that are a bit too tall, or a bit too low, or a bit too wide, and they do something with you. They have a quality of their own, which is why, if you're really honest, you all really, at some point, at least in your life, I'm sure, you all wanted to make it large, move to New York, and live in a loft. Show me if you didn't. Oh. Anyway, that is basically exactly that thinking. Why are loft apartments so attractive? Because they have this character, because they don't quite fit, because they've got windows in stupid places, but that's exactly what makes it. And I think that this is a quality that is already well understood in the residential market, and something we need to bring over to the workplace.
Let's move to the questions from the audience. Are open spaces efficient?
It depends on what you're doing there. Again, it's the variety. I think it's very important to have open spaces. I personally was really scared before I moved to London. I worked in Germany before, where we were very used to small cellular offices of 2 to 4 people in one office, and I loved that. And moving to Make, I thought, wow, this is a big open space. This is going to be loud. I won't be able to focus. It's so scary. The opposite is true for me. I really love being in that space. Yeah. It's great for team building if you're all really close together, and basically all I need to do is turn around on my chair and I see everybody's screen on the team and I can see what's going on. They all hear me on the phone, so I don't have to debrief. That's all very good for what we do. But we also have, I don't know if you've seen it, the ramp that you use to drive down the cars into our car park. We've got tables on that ramp which are meeting tables, or if you just want to go over there and have some private thinking time to sketch, I have the opportunity to go there, and I'm a bit out of the zone. And nobody will actually bother me when I'm sitting there, because that is a signal that I give that I don't want to be spoken to that very moment. I have to focus. Or we've got breakout tables for small informal meetings where we can do this. So it's variety of space that you need. If you cram everyone into one open plan, everybody's got his 1.5 meter wide or 1.6 meter wide desk, and that just goes on endless. I think that is probably a pretty horrid idea. But it's the open plan per se, with offers that are for special tasks around it, I think is the way forward.
Let's carry on with a similar question. What about the noise in the call center office? How do you manage it? There is a cafe, apparently, right next to people who are trying to make the phone calls.
It's a very interesting question, actually. It was a bit of a struggle. I don't know if you've seen, we've activated the slabs. So there are, the concrete slab is part of the climate control system. So we couldn't put a ceiling in, which is normally taking care of your acoustic performance. But I don't know if you've seen it in the images, there are lots of little vertical elements that we're hanging down, which are acoustic baffles. And we basically obviously worked with acoustic engineers to optimize this. That's one part of the story. The other part is also that, and that fits in with the previous question of the open plan. I have found that there is a cultural difference as to how you behave at your workplace. And I found that in an open plan office in London, people are generally very considerate and very quiet on the phone, don't shout too loud, don't talk too loudly, because everybody's aware of being in this big space and just takes a little more care of each other. I found the same thing in Germany, where I'm from originally, where people are a lot louder, a lot more aggressive, and a lot more pushy. So there's a cultural change that would need to happen there to actually make an open plan like this easier possible. Yep. But if nothing else, there's always acoustic engineering that you can do to these spaces.
Okay, let's carry on. With all the mobile devices available to interact, is there future for large offices?
Is that aiming at working from home and working from other places? I presume that that's where this question might come from. And I think absolutely yes. We have a policy in our office where everyone can work from everywhere. We can work from home wherever we want, or from the coffee shop around the corner. We don't really mind. Interestingly, of all the people that are in the office, nobody does it. It's very few people who have to take care of their kids for a day or something. That's an exception that somebody's working from home. But apart from that, everybody comes into the office. Why? Because we work team-based, so it's important for us, but also, and mostly, because you want to be with other people when you work. You want to have a reason to get out of bed at a certain time, to get dressed in a certain way, to see other people and be seen by other people, and to interact. So I think in the future, with all the mobile devices and doing all of this, maybe the portion of time during the day that we spend in the office may become shorter. But I believe that still every day, everybody will want to spend some time in that office. What it means for the workplace is, I think that it's more of a space that should trigger experience and should trigger communication, rather than offer your concentration space, because for that you can always go somewhere else if you need to.
Let's go with a question that made everyone smile. Do you do chair racing in the office? Who is usually winning? Is it you?
It's not me, but I know the guy really well. His name is Alessandro. He's from Malta. He's a hobby sailor. I don't know if that has anything to do with that, but he's pretty awesome on the chair. So yeah, we only do this late at night, and not normally during the day and when other people are around. But
Let me
does
guess.
happen.
I think Lara posted this question. I suspect her. How did you create your office? Did you engage your employees to create it?
Yes, absolutely.
Most of them are architects, so that was easy.
Interestingly, to actually build it, and this is a fun one, we employed another architect. Because we know that it's very difficult to work for yourself and to make your own decisions honestly. So we actually employed a consulting architect, to take us through that brief definition process. That said, we've had lots of rounds where everybody got into a room and we talked about what it is that we want to do. For example, one thing that was interesting, we took a vote on our chairs. Yep. Because I don't know if you've seen it, but our chairs are higher and our tables are higher than normal. And that goes to play back this versatility versus flexibility thing. We don't have flexible tables that we can move up and down. We just determined a height, which I believe is 1.10 m or a meter. don't really know at the moment off the top of my head, but we determined the height of a table where we can stand and sit at the same time. So you've got chairs that are a little bit higher. Yeah. What that does is two things. A, this is what I just said, you can stand and sit whilst working. The main thing is, because we walk around so much in the office, not everybody does this chair racing thing, we walk around so much and talk to each other. If I go over to somebody to talk to them and they're sitting, I don't talk down to them. Yeah. I'm more or less, again, on eye level with them. And some people didn't like these chairs so much, others did, so we took a vote. And when we moved into the new place, and made sure that at least it's a majority. It's actually the vast majority that really likes that. But we've done this through quite a few of the design aspects of the studio.
Okay, the next question is, what office will you design for AI generation?
To be honest,
do they care?
Like I said earlier, I believe yes. And I think what Lara was, the point Lara was making is that we need to ensure that the next generation has empathy, has social interaction, and enjoys human-to-human contact. And I think the workplace is a large portion of that. So I believe that it is exactly that. It is necessary to have it, is necessary to cater to. Without knowing the AI generation in detail, I wouldn't have a straightforward answer. Plus, if it was that easy, you wouldn't need me, right? I would say that the qualities we talked about are exactly the ones that we need to create places that trigger experience and interaction rather than pure focus.
The very last question, if you look at current very modern workplace designs, what would you say they still lack? What should be improved? I imagine a lot.
Yeah, well, the list, I don't know. I think, again, it's becoming, I start repeating, so maybe it's a good one. This is the last question. Every workplace, every project is different. And I think you need to look at this very much on a case-by-case basis and decide whether the solutions that have been decided for are right or not, if you analyze them. If you're moving forward, I think it's very much about understanding the market you're in, understanding the people you're working for, and the ambition behind it. But I think the key thing is, if you have made those decisions, if you have defined your brief, where it falls apart is if you don't pull through. Yeah. And if you lose track, and if it dilutes, and if it all goes a little bit pear-shaped. In the end, you as the design team, as the architect, as the client, you will always be able to explain exactly why something isn't quite right. Because at that time in the program, it was really key to make a decision, and we couldn't do anything else. You can always do that, but everybody else doesn't have that story, well, so you have to get it right.
We can sum it up as more courage.
Sorry?
More courage. We can sum it up as more courage.
Great, thanks. That's, yeah, I'll use that. I'll go with that.
Great, thank you so much, Florian.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.